everything.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Middle School Speaks. I'm Kelly and we'll be talking about if politics should be taught in schools. And I think they should be taught.
And I'm Mrs. Saunders, and I'm going to be talking about taking the counterpoint and talking about why politics should not be taught in schools.
I think they should be taught in schools because they've been taught in schools since almost the beginning of education. Here's a quote from the Academy of Social Civics. Forms of textbooks and other civic education materials have been used in American schools since at least 1790, soon after institutions of education were established. The founding fathers of the United States agreed that their vision of democracy required participants to be appropriately educated as citizens. So that is just a little background information.
So let's talk about reasons why. First, maybe we can talk about reasons why politics should not be taught in schools and why we should not include politics in a public school setting. One of them is that our students are coming from so many different political backgrounds and they're learning a lot of different things at home that it's going to be a little bit tricky to find a way to talk about the different political groups without having emotions.
And that's a great point, but I'm going to bring in something that I think is really important to also reference. Our teachers in our teachers in public schools are allowed to teach about the different religions. I think right now we just finished learning about Islam, and those are things that a lot of people get taught at home and a lot of people come from different backgrounds of. And I think those are less important. I'm not saying they're not important, but they're less important than our country and our political climate. And I think that if teachers are allowed to teach about religion and they don't have bias, I don't understand what is people's fear about them teaching something a little more important without bias as well.
That's a really good point. I didn't consider that, the fact that we are able to teach religion as part of social studies curriculum without bias. I think that's a great point. I think maybe parents are nervous that teachers will have even subtle bias in regards to the different political parties that they might be a part of. And teachers might get reprimanded for even accidentally bringing that into the classroom.
And I think that's really weird because, not your point, but I think that the parents being so scared to bring the politics into the classroom, I think that is not a good thing for the students because according to one of my articles, according to one of my articles, is it okay to talk politics in class, by Noah Denman. There are multiple students who would like to talk about politics, including, I'm going to butcher this, Viju Vishanavi. And here's a quote from her. Last year, the topic of the 2020 election came up for debate in my AP Politics/Government class, which I'll bring that back again later. I worried that talking about such a controversial subject in class would leave me riled up from all the arguing. Instead, I left the classroom feeling empowered and socially aware. The experience taught me not to shy away from tough topics. Now I believe other students should definitely use class time to discuss elections with each other. And that is really telling that even though people are scared to talk about it, it can leave people feeling so good about, what they had talked about and things that they had learned. And also AP politics and government classes, I think those should be requirements because then you're getting your civics education, which is really important. What was that point?
Those are really excellent points, actually, because one of the fears that I was going to talk about was that because we have a culture of an online culture where it's really easy to get divisive and people create stereotypes of the different kinds of people from different political parties. And I really appreciated hearing the quote where a student talked about how in her class she left feeling more empowered, that's the ultimate goal. And so I know I'm not allowed to, I have to stick with my argument of why it shouldn't be taught in schools, but I did like your point, Kelly.
Thank you for that. Wait, do you have a Chromebook charge or my Chromebook's about to die? Another article. Teachers new catch-22. Students want to talk politics, but their parents don't. There is a teacher, let me find the quote. Teacher Carrie Ann Enright, a researcher and teacher at the University of California. She said that she has a story of one teacher who experienced parental backlash for trying to comfort a Mexican origin student who were concerned about their safety because of Trump's stance on immigration. Although the teacher never said anything anti-Trump, when a parent of a white student caught wind of her efforts, she was sent an angry email accusing her of discussing politics. And I think that is a really good example of how extreme some people can be about their views, which can lead to a lot of hate and a lot of bad things. And I'm not saying that, if you're extreme about your views, you hate everyone else. I'm just saying that if you are that extreme, that if you hear about a teacher comforting a student because they're scared that they're going to get, not be able to have their citizenship anymore, I think it's time for you to tone it down and maybe, do some research, look at some articles, and maybe learn some more things before you start to yell at someone or make angry emails or comments. Just step back and think, are they actually, saying anti-Trump sentiments or doing anything that's anti your party?
I think that is one of the reasons why not teaching politics in schools is a safe and good bet. And I think there's some alternatives that can be done instead. For example, you could have lessons on teaching students how to ask questions, how to listen respectfully, how to fact check, and learn even how to debate and look at other people's look at the other side of the story, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think there are other ways to teach this kind of civics without specifically talking about Republican or Democrat or specific people or political beliefs.
Okay, and I totally understand what you're coming from, and that's a good point. But I do believe that sometimes when someone is getting extreme views all around them at home and with their families, when they come to school, they can bring that with them, and that can lead to, you know, I remember one time I had a political view. I had like a political sign in my bedroom, and I was on the phone with a boy, and he started calling me slurs and calling me like a lot of mean things, and it was just because I had a political sign that he didn't agree with. So I think if there was civics and political education and people telling like him and other people like that it's okay to have differing views, just not to like be so rigid and stuck and disrespectful to other people who don't have those views. I think that if we had people telling them that, then I probably wouldn't have gotten cussed out, or I probably just would have not talked. And I think that, you know, there are a lot of people that think like, oh, they don't think the same as me, let me try and like convince them. And then their version of convincing is like, if you don't agree with me, you know, you're this, you're that. And I think that if we had education on civics, that wouldn't be as prevalent as it is.
I do agree with you there. I think that it's so tricky too because schools can't solve these problems alone. So there are things that need to happen at home. And it's a little bit hectic right now with parents being able to report teachers directly to the Department of Ed. And I think that is a scary time to be a teacher, where you might lose your license if you are reported, and it's sometimes easier just to keep the peace at school, kind of like you might do when you have family over and no politics at the dinner table, because there are varying views. We could keep schools as a more safe place where we keep those divisive opinions and stereotypes outside of the classroom, so we can have a better opportunity to learn in school while students are here.
That is a very good point. Coming back to my next point, I think that education would also help our voters be more informed on who and what they're voting for and what different parties stand for and what, you know, they believe in.
Which is definitely true, as long as they're not being swayed one way or another by the classroom teachers.
And a good point about being swayed by the teachers. I just don't really think that it is a logical point, because when we learn about different divisive topics like I said earlier, religion or countries that are like in war and things like that, I think learning about politics is no different from learning about, you know, terrorism in like Afghanistan or things like that, or, you know, the 3 Semitic religions in our classrooms right now. And I think if we can teach that, why should we be scared to teach politics? Because I think it would be a little more useful than some of the things we are learning right now that are arguably more divisive. I also think that if we stop teaching civics and politics, I think that our country could go kind of sideways, and it can lead to a lot of you know, fights over political ideologies and fights over, you need to believe what I believe and things like that. I also think that we would also benefit from it because it's what the Founding Fathers intended for our education systems and what they wanted for our children in our schools.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just say again, these are problems that can't just be solved by the schools alone. So we really need to have communities and families help kids understand what's going on in the world and understand how to find accurate information so that they can make those informed decisions for themselves.
And that is a really good point, and that did give me a lot to think about, but I think that also in kind of in tow with civics education, I think there should be more programs teaching kids how to debate and how to make these decisions and how to, learn, like, maybe this person stands for, my religion, but they don't have the same, like, environmental concerns as I do, but this person does have those concerns, but they don't align with this one belief that I have. And I think that when we learn to make decisions like, oh, this person is this and this person's that, and I'm gonna vote for whoever, I think that our education should play a part in that, and that how we were taught make these what the heck am I talking about? I think education plays a big part in how we decide how to make decisions and how informed those decisions are on ethics and things like that. But sometimes I think people who aren't that educated on politics can just kind of vote for, whoever someone else tells them to vote for. But I think if we were more educated on politics and civics, we would be better at making those decisions for ourselves instead of, listening to the people around us.
A ton of really good points, and I'm really glad that we had the chance to talk about this. And I think that just from some of my final point that I'm going to say in regards to why politics should not be taught in schools, there's just not enough time in the school day. We have so many things that we have to cover for all of the different required standards that need to be met. And so it would be tricky to fit in politics because it's such a huge topic to cover. And I think that can be challenging to be able to teach this without accidentally bringing in some biases, and which, of course, parents would not be comfortable with us bringing in any kind of biases to try and sway students. So that is why I think we are better off not teaching this in schools.
That is a really good point, and that gave me a little to think about. So I'm going to make my conclusion that if we were to kind of let down the kind of fear we have of politics in our classrooms and just let our kids be educated by programs or classes about these things, I think that it would be really helpful, and the classes would help make a lot of more informed and educated voters.
Okay, well, thanks so much for this debate. It's been really interesting for me.
Yeah. And that's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Middle School Speaks. Yeah.